Last but not least,
I'm going to stand up here.
that's it.
I can sit, I can stand, I can do all kinds of things. Oh my goodness, I've been biting my tongue about election matters. I'm Dave Shestokas. Can we do Shestokas? Shestokas. Not bad. I'm going to tell you, I'm scheduled probably to be on near the end of this week, but almost a year ago I had a chance, I was on with Steve Bannon talking about election matters in Pennsylvania, where I was one of the president's lawyers, and some of those issues. But Mr. Bannon had troubles, and throughout the 7 or 8 minutes, he said, "We're so happy to have Mr. Shestokas here." So but I hope Steve's going to get it right this week, because I'm scheduled to be on with him probably Thursday on the War Room, talking about some of these matters. And I'm going to toss away. I'm running for Illinois Attorney General, and I usually do a little bit of an introduction about that office, just because, strangely enough, and you're educated and activist and involved in things, but many people don't understand the office of the Illinois Attorney General, because the U.S. Attorney General is, of course, the name that they're familiar with when they hear that term, but that officer, of course, is appointed by and serves at the pleasure of the President of the United States. And so ultimately, though he's head of the Justice Department, they always say, well, the Justice Department's impartial and all that other stuff. But considering the fact that the President can fire the Attorney General of the United States, he executes the President's policies as a matter of practicality. That's not the case here. The case here is the Illinois Attorney General is elected by and responsible to the people. I'm going to move back a little bit. So as a result of that, he is supposed to represent the people. There's something called the Illinois Attorney General Act that defines 15 specific duties. And he's a constitutional officer separate apart from the governor. And in fact, the Illinois Attorney General Act, of the 15 duties that's outlined, the very first one says to represent the people of the state. Not the governor, not the Board of Elections, not the Department of Public Health, not the Board of Education, but the people of the state of Illinois. And that's what we're going to do. I'm going to get back to that in a minute, but I've been biting my tongue because of all this election talk, and I want to address some of that. From that perspective, I was with the Trump and Rubio campaign in Broward County, Florida in 2016. I found 150,000 illegally open ballots in the back room in Broward County, and we did some things to address that issue. And you can look that up, Shestokas, Miami Herald, and their stories on what I did in the 2016 election in that regard. And you can find some stories on that. That stories is not complete stories. They don't tell you everything. The media has a penchant for doing, but it'll give you a good idea of some of the stuff that I did in Florida in 2016. 2018, I did some election integrity matters for Peter Roskam. 2020, I was on the president's legal team in the state of Pennsylvania. And as a result of that, I wound up in court with Mayor Giuliani, and as a result of that, I also testified before the Pennsylvania Senate Committee on what went wrong in Pennsylvania, and I do a whole hour and a half on Pennsylvania from what happened. Following that, I wound up in Georgia on the National Republican Senatorial Committee for the Georgia runoffs that happened in the beginning of January 2021, and I do a whole hour on Georgia from that standpoint on what happened. And I actually was involved with some vote adjudication and Dominion machines. I actually worked on Dominion machines while I was in Georgia, and some of the things that went wrong there. So now, because of all that, I am on the State Central Republican Ballot Integrity Committee. And we are addressing a lot of these things that people are concerned about, some of which are going to take place even before June. With us tonight is another fellow that's on that committee, Mr. Michael Trickey. Mike is a forensic data analyst. And one of the problems that happened between Georgia, Pennsylvania, Arizona, speaking of which, I was also consultant to the Arizona House on their constitutional authority when it comes to what they're dealing with in regards to the audit. So I've been involved in these matters all across the country. And right now we're specifically focusing on things in Illinois. One of the things that we're focusing on actually arises out of my particular experience in Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, subsequent to the November 4th of the election, I was given a list of 21,000 voters, and it was put together, and we split it up among a variety of folks for a vetting process. And the voter list was people that voted in the election, and they had the voter's name and the date they asked for their mail-in ballot, the date the ballot went out, the date the ballot was returned, the date the ballot was counted, and the very last column on this PDF file was the distance from the voter's polling place to their grave site. Wow. Okay, so I became obsessed with that situation. I actually dealt with and was vetting 600 of those when issues came up, and they asked me to come from the western part of Pennsylvania to the eastern part of Pennsylvania and wind up in court with Mayor Giuliani, where, by the way, I was there on a Tuesday, scheduled to testify on Thursday as to matters that went on in western Pennsylvania. By default, it's a strange story, by default I became the western Pennsylvania expert on the team. And I was going to testify in court on a Thursday on an issue involving 600,000 votes in Pennsylvania. And the judge, at the conclusion of the hearing on the Tuesday, canceled the Thursday evidentiary hearing that I was supposed to be testified at. And on the Friday after that Tuesday hearing, dismissed the case without ever hearing any evidence. So when people tell you that there was 50 losses in courtrooms across the country, it was 50 chicken judges. 50 chicken judges that didn't want to do their job, that refused to hear the cases. These cases were being dismissed left and right without anybody ever hearing a drop of evidence. I was scheduled to testify. Ultimately, I was able to give most of that testimony to the Pennsylvania Senate on the day before Thanksgiving in Gettysburg, in Pennsylvania. That they had a special hearing. It was in fact broadcast, and you can find me on. You can look up the Pennsylvania hearing, and it's on YouTube. You can find my testimony if you care to look at that. So you can find out what I did in Florida. You can find out what I did in Pennsylvania. It's all available in an open book. Now, I became obsessed with these 21,000 dead voters in Pennsylvania, and so we wound up in a situation. Mike's one of our brilliant data guys that's on the team doing this. But one of the things that went wrong early on was the data guys and the lawyers weren't talking to each other. Okay, the data guys. I'm working with Bobby Peyton. I'm working with Jovan Pulitzer. There's another fellow by the name of Roger Fuller that's part of this team. Mike's now part of the team. He's a forensic data analyst. And what the data guys generally do, no offense, Mike, but usually they see these big pictures and they're all brilliant people, and they think we're all as brilliant as they are. And then they go, okay, here's the numbers, this is how it is. And the rest of the world goes, oh no, when you say 600,000, it goes over their heads. And so now we got the lawyers working with the data guys. Okay, and the data guys, we're testing, we're getting stuff that's bulletproof that we can take into a courtroom, and we will embarrass judges if in fact they dismiss these matters. I can't give you the details because, strangely enough, if we get the details and they dribble out and people, one of the bad things that happened was back in 2020, early 2020, after the election, was they were talking about massive numbers like this 600,000 number that I was talking about in Pennsylvania, and that gives the media and other folks that want to poo-poo it, go, these numbers are so huge that that gives them the opportunity to go, this is some kind of crazy conspiracy theory. And so that's why we are protecting our data to the point where when we do take our data, it will be bulletproof. But it will not only be bulletproof. Mr. Pulitzer is actually in the process of scraping the internet so that we won't actually have the distance from the polling place to the gravesite. Actually, Mr. Pulitzer is going to provide us with pictures of the voters' headstones. And so there's a plan and a schedule to take these matters as soon as we have them where we want them, and it's been going on for pretty close to a year, to the county clerks. And once they get to the county clerks, typically I imagine some of you have done this and asked county clerks to remove voters or whatever, and the county clerks say, oh sure, and then you go back a month later and nothing happens, right? Well, yeah, this time we got lawyers. Okay, we got the lawyers that will, in fact, when the county clerks don't do it, we're not going to go in and say, oh no, please, could you please remove these guys? we're going to go say, no, you have 21 days to get these off, or else we'll go into the courtroom, we're going to get a court order to make sure that you do that, or you'll be in contempt of court and you're going to be punished accordingly. Okay, so there's stuff that we are planning. If we get the data bulletproof the way we want it, we're planning to have this before June 28th. So when somebody says it's not before your election, I can't guarantee that's going to happen. There's been a lot of hiccups. When you talk about the 8.9 million voter records in the state of Illinois for people who are registered, which by the way is an increase of 800,000 since the November 20. Right now it was 8.1 million voter records that existed in the state of Illinois when the November election of 2020 took place. Right now the number is 8.9 million. It's 800,000 more than 18 months ago or 14 months ago, or somewhere in that range, in a state that lost 100,000 in population in that time. So, honest to goodness, I wish I could share more with you, but sharing more is dangerous, only to the extent that if you drib out bits and pieces, then people go, oh, this is some sort of conspiracy stuff at work. So I hate to say this, trust, but your vote is going to count. The other biggest thing that, and if we had Bobby here, Bobby Piton would talk about this at length. But he talks about at length how they do these things. But the biggest thing they do is votes that aren't cast is what they work with, right? So the biggest thing anybody can do to protect their vote is what? Vote. You know, that's the biggest thing you can do to protect your vote is to vote. And strangely enough, Roger Fuller, he's another of the data guys on the team, says the biggest thing you can do to protect your vote to vote and keep the folks from being able to project what's going to happen and know what they need to mess with when it comes over is vote on election day. Because they won't be able to compensate for those kinds of things. I know everybody encourages early voting and mail-in voting, but the fact is voting on election day keeps the guys that project what's going to happen and what needs to be manipulated. It keeps them on their toes, and that's why they have to do stuff at 3, 4, 5 in the morning, because they can't predict what's going to happen if most of the votes come in on election day. It's why they want early voting. It's why they want mail-in ballots, because they know where those votes came. They know what they happen. They know the tendencies for the geography, because the county clerks report every day who's voted already, right? So then they know how many votes from this area, and they also know the voting history of this area, and they know. So the best way to defeat these kinds of things is vote, and not early. Vote on election day. That's so. This is Roger. He's one of our data team guys who's done this analysis. He's done this analysis in California. They worked on Maricopa County, and so. And that's why this is why I was biting my tongue with all these questions, because we know stuff, and there's stuff that is going on. It's got nothing to do with. It's also to do with that. I'm also, as a other issue regarding the Attorney General's office, I'm also the attorney for an organization called the Illinois Conservative Union. Some of you might have heard of that. Carol Davis has been going around doing a lot of training for precinct workers and poll watchers and election judges. I have sued on behalf of the Illinois Conservative Union, the Board of Elections. I'm in court with the Illinois State Board of Elections. We have stuff going on there because the Illinois State Board of Elections, 3 years ago, the Illinois Conservative Union asked for the voter data that they needed to see if they could clean up the voter rolls. And of course, we know what the Board of Elections told these 3 ladies, right? 4 ladies, all grandmothers. No, you can't have it. Well, you don't tell Carol Davis that no, you can't have something. And so I wound up filing a suit for them in federal court. And they filed one motion to dismiss. We beat that. They filed another motion to dismiss, which was really interesting for me on that standpoint, because I was able to argue the states let go of some of their state sovereignty in the Constitutional Convention of 1787. I love that kind of argument. But we won that motion to dismiss. And then, now we've won their motions to dismiss. They're having all these interrogatories. Carol Davis is a grandma. She in fact calls herself Granny with a mission, and is the national ballot integrity person for Freedom Works. And Carol is, as I said, granted with a mission, and our other three cohorts in this case, they're all grandmothers as well. And now the Illinois State Board of Elections has filed motions for us to provide them with what? Their criminal history, right? Whether they've been in prison, what their felony records are, what their job records are, and none of which has anything to do with their ability to have this information. This information they are in fact entitled to under federal law, something called the National Voter Registration Act, Section 8, and in fact, this matter has been decided in 12 other states. This is not new law, right? This has been already decided in 12 other states. And guess who the lawyer is for the Illinois State Board of Elections is doing all this junk? The Illinois Attorney General. And guess what he did? I'm not going to say this because they're recording it. He got me mad. He got me mad. So Raul and his cohorts are practicing what we would call lawfare against the citizens of the state of Illinois. And it's not just this case. I had the opportunity and pleasure, I had spoken to, I was speaking at the Elam Romanian Pentecostal Church, which the state of Illinois dragged all the way to the United States Supreme Court, arguing the church services were not essential. You know who did that, right? Kwame Raoul. Okay. They're still in court where they've been denying equal protection law to high school athletes, where they were giving privileges to professional athletes and to college athletes that they were denying to high school athletes. Guess who was doing that? Kwame Raoul. Everything you hate about J.B. Pritzker, Kwame Raoul is in fact the one that allows that defends it, that facilitates it, that makes it happen. Okay? And so we need, and as I may have lost my place because I got on the election stuff, but the Illinois Attorney General, again, is elected by the people and is supposed to represent the people, not the government, not the Department of Public Health, not the Board of Elections and all these other agencies. What the Attorney General should, I can't expect him to know everything that's going on throughout the government, but as soon as there's a lawsuit, he should understand that citizens are pretty perturbed. And guess what? Those are the people that elected him. What he should have done when I filed a lawsuit for the Illinois Conservative Union, my numbers on paper, right? Dave, what's wrong with your people? What are they upset about? And we could have sat down. I could have explained to him that this is federal law. It's already been decided in 12 other states. And what Raul should have done at that point in time was, okay, boom, boom, boom. Hello, Mr. Sandvoss at the Board of Elections. Yeah, give them the data, right? Give them the data. They are entitled to it under federal law. Open the church. They're entitled to it by the First Amendment. Let the high school athletes participate in sports the same way as the college athletes, as the professional athletes, right? This is what he should be doing. He should be representing the people. Okay, that's one of the issues. One of the things that I'm involved with, and one of the things that, in fact, I will do on my first day as your Attorney General, right? Not the government's Attorney General, but your Attorney General, is I would get my deputies together. I said, bring me all the cases that the citizens have filed against the state of Illinois, and let's see what we can do to resolve these, because the citizens are the people we represent. The citizens aren't always going to be right, but we're going to get them in here, and we're not going to just knee-jerk drag them up and down the courthouse step and try to wear them out with their money and with their data. So that's number one. Then we're going to take all those deputies, attorney generals, and assistant attorney generals that are no longer litigating against the people, and have them do what? Oh, I don't know. I think we just sign a couple to see what Kim Fox is doing. We just sign a couple to see what Mr. Reinhardt is doing up in Lake County, because I had a nice conversation with Mark Weiss about the problems of the prosecuting office in Lake County. I had a wonderful conversation with Mark about that on that subject. He told me about a situation where there was a burglary and some folks died, and they did not prosecute any felony murders on these people that instituted those burglaries. And so Kim Fox is not the only problem. Kim Fox makes the headlines. But apparently Mr. Reinhardt is a problem as well. And it's not the only problem around the state, but beyond all that, the problems that those people have, or the problems of those people not prosecuting cases, is rolls over and falls into other people. I get along well with Bob Berlin and Sheriff Mendrick down in DuPage County. And they said about a third or better of the people in the DuPage County Jail are folks from Cook County that have already been arrested in Cook County and been released. And so now they run over and get into DuPage. Guess what? They don't get released in DuPage. You know, so this is not a single problem. But what people don't understand is that the Attorney General of the state of Illinois has the authority to go in to local jurisdictions and prosecute cases that the local people refuse to do. And we're going to have all these deputy attorney generals that are doing nothing because they're not litigating against the citizens. And so we're going to have them monitoring the local prosecutors who are refusing to prosecute crimes, and then we're going to go in and prosecute them. And oh, by the way, I'm a former assistant state's attorney. I was involved with and involved in the prosecution and investigation of more than 400 felony matters and over 10,000 misdemeanors. And there's 2 other guys running against me. And the first criminal case either of those guys will prosecute, or the next criminal case either of those guys prosecute will in fact be their first. So I would suggest to you, and it's wonderful, I know Mr. Rice is concerned about crime and all the other folks are concerned about crime that are running for office. There's only one office on the ballot that can actually, on the very first day, do anything about it. And that's the Attorney General's office. And I'm the only candidate for the Attorney General's office that has actually prosecuted a crime. And beyond prosecuting one crime, I've actually 400 plus felonies and over 10,000 misdemeanors. I think the number's higher, but then people would tell me that that's some sort of conspiracy stuff, you know. Because when I was sworn in as a state's attorney, I was sworn in the morning. We had a little coffee and donuts and stuff, and then went to the office and there was 400 files on my desk. And I went to see my trial supervisor, and I said, "Oh, this is great. I'm happy. I want to get to work. I want to roll. You know, I want to do stuff." And I said, "When are these in court?" He says, "This afternoon." So when I say 20,000 or 10,000, it's just 10,000 people believe, 20,000 they don't, but it's probably in excess of that. So anyway, that's the story on that. Now, the fourth duty of the 15 duties in the Illinois Attorney General Act is in fact to prosecute and maintain and look over election crimes. When is the last time you've heard anybody indicted for an election crime here in Illinois? Let's go with never. But it's really not never. I have a friend that retired from the Justice Department about 40 years. Actually, did indict and send 60 people in Southern Illinois to jail on election matters. But it's been a long time, and it was the feds. Which brings me to another point, and that is, of course, it's nice. A lot of people mention how wonderful it is that Mr. Madigan and Mr. Burke and those folks are meeting with some justice. Truth is, it's actually kind of embarrassing. How long was Madigan around? 50 years? Yeah. How many attorney generals have we gone through in those 50 years? How many of those did never indict any of these people? None of them. You know, why do we have to wait for a federal prosecutor to do this work?
Well, Lisa Madigan's actually a son.
Huh?
Lisa Madigan's his stepdaughter.
Yeah, right. No,
Is she
yeah.
gonna indict her dad?
Yeah, right, exactly. No, for the last 2 years, we've got a guy that's the governor's wingman, and before that, we had the speaker's wing lady, in the 12 years prior to that. So, you're absolutely right. So when it comes to, and oh, by the way, the next time either of my opponents deal with an election matter, the first time, yeah. That'll be the first time that either one of those guys deal with an election matter. And beyond all the other election things I talked about, I'm also a hearing officer for the Chicago Board of Elections. I actually make decisions and rule on petitions and election questions and actual issues. So I've not only dealt with those matters, I've actually made decisions that have been adopted by the election board. I've never had a decision that I made on an election question overturned. So we're talking about the criminal stuff. We're talking about the election stuff. We're talking about the litigation against the citizens representing the government and not the people. I would suggest that from that standpoint, I know a little bit more than the other guys that are doing this stuff. I just had one other point about the Office of the Attorney General. I was, as I mentioned, a prosecutor. I was an assistant state's attorney in Cook County back when we put people in jail. You know, there was a quaint thought. But that being said, I'd get up, I'd stand in the morning, and I'd be in front of the judge. Good morning, Your Honor. David Shestokas on behalf of the people of the state of Illinois. And I took it serious that not only were the people that were alleging that they were wronged, alleging that there was a criminal act perpetrated against them, I took it to heart. The guy standing over on the other side was one of the people of the state of Illinois. And my duty was to justice. My duty, if in fact if the government's going to try and attempt to take somebody's life, liberty, or property, they have to do it by virtue of the due process of law. They have to do it beyond a reasonable doubt. They have to do it with and dot the T's and cross the I's and see to it that that's all done legally. So it's an interesting world in law. This is a unique kind of position, the Attorney General's office or state's attorneys or prosecutors, because in most places in the world, and for a lawyer, what your job is, in fact, is to zealously advocate for your client, right? That's not the case in this situation. The case in this situation is, in fact, to achieve justice. And I think that's another situation that I have experience in doing, that neither of the other two guys that are on the ballot have any experience in doing that. Because as far as I know, they're both fine attorneys. You know, as best as I know, as best as I follow, a lot of them had some relatively recent public success. But that's not just the only experience you need. That's not just the only experience you need. I would suggest that when we're worried about integrity of elections, somebody that knows something about elections and dealt with it, both on the ground and in a courtroom and as a hearing officer, I think that's really, really important when it comes to dealing with the issues regarding the circumstances of criminal situations and being necessary and understanding that we can oversee and prosecute crimes that the local folks, the local woke prosecutors, if you will, do not prosecute. I think it's helpful to have somebody that's done that. And when it comes to the situation that you know, you're getting dragged up and down the courthouse steps, I think it was you that mentioned Judicial Watch, by the way. I'm not sure. Somebody here mentioned Judicial Watch. Oh, it might have been Max. Oh yeah, I think Max did mention Judicial Watch. After I filed the lawsuit for the Illinois Conservative Union, Judicial Watch has now come on and assisting us in that prosecution. So I'm actually working with Judicial Watch. So there's a few things I've done. I don't know that I'm all that particularly good. Maybe I'm just old. You know, I've just been around a long time. But I think I've done a few things that are more useful for this job than anybody else. I want to address something else, and that is I'm American. I'm an associate member of the Polish American Congress of Northern Illinois Division. They only made me associate member because I'm just Lithuanian. I'm not Polish. They want me to get a DNA. I told them what I want to do is restore the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and which, of course, as you no doubt, ruled Europe for about 300 years. Nobody else knows that.
You know that this is right now not politically correctly in Europe. So we have to wait a little bit.
We have to wait a little bit. And that was done by marriage, too, with the Polish prince and the Lithuanian princess. Or no, it was the Lithuanian prince and the Polish princess.
Exactly.
Excuse me. So, and that's probably why I still think Polish women are cute.
It's called, this guy called Jagiello.
Yes, Jagiello. Exactly. So I have a connection to the Polish folks. And I'm going to tell you one other story there about this, and then I'll take some questions or I'll shut up, whichever you prefer. But regarding that, regarding my Lithuanian heritage and my connections to the Polish community, one of the things that I think is also important in what you decide in terms of a primary, making a primary decision is whether or not somebody can win. You know, and 4 years ago, Erica Harold won the state of Illinois outside of Cook County. Okay? She needed a switch of 277,000 votes in Cook County to have that happen. Now, before I get to where I'm going on that, I'm going to tell you another story. I am Lithuanian by heritage. All my grandparents are from Lithuania. My one grandmother, Barbara Shestokas, had a family of 11. She was one of 11 children. They had a farm in Lithuania near the turn of the century. There was something called the Russian Revolution. And they were invading and taking up and swallowing all kinds of their neighbors. 8 of my grandmother's brothers and sisters, and they had a farm. One was a priest, another was a nun, 2 were school teachers, the other folks running the farm. 8 of them were slaughtered by communists. And my grandmother was put on a boat when she was 15 years old, all by her lonesome for America, because they did that to save her life. Now, Grandma was born in September, but she made us celebrate her birthday on the 4th of July, because that was the anniversary of her naturalization as an American citizen. And that's the date my grandmother considered herself to have truly been born. Now, we have my Polish friend, Dziękuję for being here. And there is in Chicago over 1 million folks between the Poles, the Lithuanians, the Ukrainians, the Romanians that have similar family histories, that are similarly connected. I have good relationships with those folks, and of those 1 million people, we're going to find those 277,000 votes to turn the office of the Attorney General for the state of Illinois red. I can win. I can win in a way no other candidate can. Nobody else that's either from downstate or been a corporate lawyer and otherwise doing things cannot do what I can do from those connections and from that particular connection. Besides all that, where everybody says, all the Republicans around go, oh, but for Cook County, right? Well, I'm a Cook County guy. We never have a Cook County guy. We never have a former Cook County prosecutor. We never have somebody whose family sold beer on the south side of Chicago for 60 years to 2,000 taverns and liquor stores. I still gonna go around in liquor stores and taverns in Chicago. They don't have any trouble saying Shestokas, by the way. You know, and they go and I introduce myself. Oh, they go, oh, the beer people. So we're not unknown there. We've got a long family history. I've got the history and connections with Cook County. I was at a Polish dinner. I was there with Senator Darren Bailey, and Senator Bailey and I were talking to one of the leaders of the Polish community, who also happened to grow up on the south side of Chicago. And he was saying that, oh yeah, he grew up in Garfield Ridge. I said, well, I grew up in Clarion. He said, oh, I went to St. Rita. I said, oh, I went to St. Simferosa. And we walked away, and Bailey's just shaking his head, going, what the hell was all that about? And I just looked at Senator Bailey, and who's become a good friend. I've probably seen the governor guys more than anybody else. It was become a good friend, but I just said to Senator Bailey, I said, this is why you need a Cook County guy. You know, you need somebody that can talk Cook County, if you will. You know, so there's the credentials, there's the qualifications, there's the election stuff, there's the prosecution stuff, there's the litigation stuff, and I can win. So if anybody has any questions, I went way the heck away from what I was going to talk about, because I wanted to start off with the election stuff to get that out of the way. And yes, sir.
I just have one simple question.
Yes.
And this is as the second vice chairman of the Republican Party. I'm no longer representing Marketplace here.
Okay.
And everything you said is absolutely true. Cook County guy can change and pull out the immigrants that are in there. We haven't had it. We haven't gone there since Judy Bartofink. There's not Judy Bartofink won statewide.
And I've pokered with her.
Here's my question. You're going around telling everybody don't vote early, don't vote by mail. Everybody, you're going to have 2,500,000 people turn out and secure that they can get to the polls on election day. without
Somebody
missing
had,
the
some,
polls.
that was in response to a particular issue. Okay, if, I'm just saying, if you wanna be sure your vote counts, our data guys, this is what my data people tell me, whether that's, you know, and that's how and what you're talking about actually is what overcomes.
This is what's killing Republicans. And to your point, 3 o'clock drops, and why they go from here to here is because Democrats push vote by mail. I've done recounts at the Lake County Courthouse. There was no fraud. Are the rolls need to be cleaned up? Yes. Were the elections done right? Yes. Were there ballot harvesting, which is completely legal in Illinois, where you have nursing homes gathering ballots from everybody and how they vote? That's a different story during COVID because the friends and families were locked out. But if we keep telling Republicans, show up on election day, 10% of that vote doesn't make it home from work. It doesn't get out of the house if it's cold. We need to use our tools. So when John Smith, the Republican at the end of the block, votes by mail, we can block it off, and then you have nothing to do. John Smith can work in the polls, early vote by mail, and if John Smith shows up again, he can say, and he already voted, he doesn't get the vote for it.